Soome kolleegid ettevõttest Senati Properties ehk siis ettevõttest, mis haldab Soome Riigi Kinnisvara. Kokku on nende portfellis 9000 hoonet ja kuidas nemad süsiniku neutraalsuse poole liiguvad, kuuleme Juha Lemströmi ettekandest nüüd.
I would like to thank Riigi Kinnisvara that you have invited me to talk about carbon neutrality in Finland. I am Juha Lemström, Director for Corporate and Social Responsibility and Quality, and I have worked several tens of years for State of Finland as an architect and project director and COO in Senati Properties. Today, Director for Corporate Social Responsibility and Quality. Just a few slides for you to understand the background, where I'm coming from. Senati Properties is a more than 200 years old organization, and we are a business entity, almost like a company, but under the Ministry of Finance directly. Our task is to provide real estate and real estate services for the state organizations, ministries, agencies, governmental institutions. We are one of the biggest, if not the biggest, building owner in Finland, with almost 9,000 buildings and 6 million square meters. For this today's subject, I also saw that we have 80,000 tons of carbon emissions. Within state of Finland, there is 75,000 people working, and we are about 1,200. One of the most important figures is, of course, the investments, which is about varying, of course, from year to year, but it's about 350 million euros per year. Here you can see the background, what we are doing. Not going to the details, about half of our premises are for defense forces and half for everything else within the state of Finland. Government's costs for premises spaces are about 750 million euros per year, and that's about 7% of all government expenses. Not much, but a big amount of money, even that. What differs us from the other building owners, that we have a big protected heritage group of buildings in Senati Properties. And one interesting thing is also that although we have 6 million square meters, so we even rent from the market, private market, about 1 million square meters for the state use. Buildings are not the only premises the state of Finland have. Finland have divided the premises and real estates to 3 categories. Land and water assets is under Finnish Forest Agency with a balance about 4 billion euros. Building properties are mainly under Senati Properties, and our balance is also about 4 billion euros. But the biggest part of state real estates and premises are in the infrastructure. And the Finnish Transport and Infrastructure Agency with a balance of 20 billion euros take care of that. These 3 are the concentrated real estate units, and the state will gather everything and concentrate everything to them. Why? This is because we feel that it's the most efficient and productive way to take care of the real estates, and also remember the overall interest of the state. Well, the theme of the day is the climate change. Carbon neutrality is not a new thing in the world. You could go far away back in the history, but I would just point out a couple of things. 1992, there was a Rio de Janeiro's Earth Summit, and the United Nations framework for the climate change was founded there. The Kyoto Climate Agreement, intergovernmental agreement, was done on the basis of the Rio Summit results. What has happened after that? Actually, I have to say that not very much. Even Nobel's Peace Prize went to the work for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and former US Vice President Al Gore, to create and disseminate awareness of mankind's change for the climate change and the combating against it. Important things, but not that much done when you look at the statistics. A couple of years ago, IPCC published again a study, and with the results of that, emissions are increasing, as everybody know, in huge amount. About 100 years ago, we have a 3.5 billion tons of emissions, carbon emissions in the world. Today we have 10 times of that, 35 billion tons. We have to do something for that, because this growth is impossible for future, as we know in everyday news. But mankind has also succeeded. And I'd like to that we remember the ozone depletions, the thinning of the ozone layer in the world. It was shown that it was caused by the compounds and chemicals in atmosphere, what we are using here in the Earth. And pretty quickly, Montreal Protocol was done 87, and it turned that the CFC products and other substances was forbidden, and that helped a lot. Today, we are expecting that the ozone layer may recover in a couple of tens of years. People can do and good things for the climate change also. And then we have here a slide in Finnish, because the Finnish government came out with a roadmap for carbon neutrality for Finland for next 15 years, 1.5 years ago. The goal is clear. Finland will be carbon neutral by 2035 as a first fossil-free welfare society. And for this work, state want to show example. The state's buildings and building stock emphasizes on low carbon energy and energy efficiency. This is a clear goal. But is it possible to reach those goals? My answer is today, maybe. But that's not easy. As said, so carbon neutrality is not a new thing. Actually, big start change happened when EU made an energy efficiency directive 2012. And there points out two big important things: energy efficiency and carbon emissions. And Senate Properties has worked for this directive. Finland made it national climate, energy and climate strategy in the beginning of the year 2013. And after that, we have calculated according to greenhouse gas protocols weigh our emissions, and we have done 80% less emissions in 8 years. It's a very good result, but it's not enough. We have an idealistic goal that within few years we will even make a half of it today and end of this decennium to zero, or at least almost to zero. A lot of things can be done. This is a good news. The first thing, of course, is to know where you are. We have calculated net zero carbon building system, weigh our emissions, but that's not a total emissions. The last winter we used quite a lot of time to calculate out and make a calculation principles how the total CO2 emissions can be calculated and should be calculated, again according to the greenhouse gas protocols advices. Important to know where we are today. This is the figure how we calculate. I don't go to the details, but we will publish our way of calculating before Christmas. That's my promise. It was thought that it would have been ready earlier, but finishing take a little bit time. So, done according to the greenhouse gas protocol. And it goes to the details, but to keep this in higher level, so the total amount of emissions you can see on the right side slide, about 200,000 tons. So total emissions of Senati Properties buildings and premises. And it can be divided to two big groups. Emissions of energy used in the building, in heating, lighting, etc., is about half of it, 100,000 tons. And all other things, concluding construction, management, services, and so on, that's another half of this 200,000 tons. So 1,000 tons, 100 tons plus 100 tons, that's 200 tons. Easy to remember. What we learned in this greenhouse gas protocol calculation group, that we have to divide our emissions to two main groups. Emissions during the use of building, when people are using the building, working there, doing what they have to do. So this kind of emissions. And those emissions, according to our roadmap, can be carbon neutral within the next few years. Much harder and much more difficult part of total emissions is the construction and maintenance constructions, everything which is doing with the building work. This industry is international and worldwide, and in order to turn construction work to carbon neutrality needs that the whole industry all over the world will be carbon free. And this is something what we see that it's not possible. We might reach the 2035 a level of 50%, but at the end, at that time, we have to compensate the rest of emissions if we want to have it in zero emissions. So two main groups. We have made a strategy how to deal with these problems. We have made our own roadmap in accordance with the state roadmap, and this divides, and we say that our roadmap is actually two roadmaps. As I earlier said, so carbon neutral use of properties is one road, and the next road is the carbon neutral construction and repair and maintenance work. We have the goals for 1920s and for 1935, and Senate Properties want to give this promise to everybody, and especially for the state of Finland. Carbon neutral in use of properties is based on improving the space efficiency and reducing of energy consumption. And then we are going to move and transit all the energy we buy to the zero emission energy. And improving the energy efficiency throughout the maintenance activities. And if possible, then compensation of the last emissions. On the construction side, it's a much longer way because, as everybody understand, the construction is not the way you can do quickly or turn out. We have the buildings today, mostly what we have 2035 already. Construction shall be changed to flexibility and sustainability, that the buildings can be used in several ways. We have to turn to the emission-free building materials and use the circular economy principles in the materials, because in the materials you have the emissions in the construction. One point of view is emission-free construction sites. About 10 or more than 10% of all the emissions of construction happens in the construction sites, in services and other things. But here we have to use compensations if we want to reach the carbon neutrality. For the next 4 years, starting at the January, we have our strategy, which tells that we want to halve our emissions. Zero emissions, and as I told, so change the purchased bought energy, zero emissions, own energy productions, low emission service procurement, and we will build about 50 solar power plants with 2 million euros per each year during this strategy period, and converting about 100 oil heating plants to emission-free energy, and buying only district heating and district cooling emission-free if it's possible. In the construction, it's much more difficult, and what we are going to start there is to start with the calculation and the carbon footprint calculations in the construction projects, always when the project is worth more than 1 million euro. And this is the tool where we can try to minimize our carbon footprint in building. In Finland, we have a system how to calculate the so-called normal level construction emissions, and we have a goal that in our projects, our footprint is 25% lower than the normal level, and in repair projects, 15% smaller than the carbon footprint in normal level. The roadmap is actually pretty easy. We have to know where we are today. We have to make studies and calculate our starting point. We have to make our plans how to minimize emissions. in a cost-effective way, and then implement the decisions. And this will roll down year after year. Look at where we are now, make new plans, implement. Again, look at where we are now, make new plans, implement the decisions again. And finally, if nothing can be done, then we go to the compensations. But that's the last thing to do. To handle this, we have made a lot of different smaller projects. Big thing, the carbon emissions, is the thing that you can't get a grip. So dividing those to the minor projects and giving a project plan from each other and giving a person who is responsible for this special project, we are going to reach the results what we want to have. We are not going to look at this, but this is a list of projects going on already today. Every project makes its own project plan and reports it with this kind of a blanket where you very tightly tell. This is the project's name is increasing the solar electricity, and what's the target about the project and description of the projects, and then the status report of it. So as you can see there, so we have done decisions, and last year 16 solar plants was done. This year also plant 20 done, 16, and for the next years again 20 new power plants has been started. This is another example of a totally new project just starting meeting for a couple of weeks ago. Minimize the emissions of refrigerants, cooling materials, and how to do that, and create the reporting and calculation systems. Again, who is responsible for this project is described. Okay, sorry. It's not enough just talk about the building and efficient buildings and carbon efficiency in the buildings. The low emission buildings is not enough. Even more important, according to us, is the efficient use of the buildings. Since 2014, Finland has had the state space strategy, which describes how the state use the spaces and premises and what is the efficiency targets. The main goal is not saving money or less carbon emissions. The main goal is, of course, that the premises support the operations and the work in buildings in the spaces, but in cost-efficient way and with environmental considerations in mind, mostly then here carbon emissions. And it's really possible. So the aim of a strategy is to reduce the use of the space almost to half of current level for the office places. We have, if I say in round numbers, so 20 square meters per person today, and after this strategy period, which covers to 1930, so that will be 10 square meters per person in office work. And then the second part is to significantly increase the space efficiency also in other use-related premises and work. So with all these things, we are thinking that we can achieve the results. Finland has a rental system, and we are just renewing the strategies. Maybe in the November few weeks, our government will decide on this new real estate strategy, which is not very much renewed, and a new space strategy, which is quite demanding. And the rental system is renewed last year. Carbon neutrality has a central role in both strategies, so this will help us to achieve our goals. And I'd like to thank you for interest for this lesson. Have a nice conference.